My name is Larato Bopape, and this morning, the man who thought my face was a canvas for his drunken rage is watching his entire legacy crumble into the London fog while I sit in a quiet garden, safe and finally heard. There is a cinematic weight to the moment when a man who thinks he is a god realizes he is merely a mortal who has offended a king. In the gilded ballrooms of Mayfair, they see women like me, women from Botswana who care for their children, as invisible infrastructure. They forget that even the most invisible person can be precious to someone they fear. Have you ever been punished for simply standing up for your own dignity? Please, share your experience in the comments below. I came to London 3 years ago, leaving behind the wide, open skies of Gaborone to work as a nanny for one of the city's most prominent families. I am a woman of patience and soft words. I speak to the children with the kindness my mother taught me, and I navigate their world of privilege with a quiet, observant grace. I knew my place in their hierarchy, but I also knew my worth as a human being. The incident happened during a midsummer gala, a night of flowing champagne, silk gowns, and the kind of unchecked ego that often leads to disaster. I was in the kitchen hallway, preparing a bottle for the youngest child, when a guest stumbled into my path. He was a man named Harrison Thorne, a property developer whose family had owned half of London for a century. He was red-faced and reeking of expensive scotch. When he nearly knocked me over, I caught my balance and spoke firmly but politely. "Please be careful, sir. I am carrying the baby's milk." He stopped, his eyes narrowing, as if he couldn't believe a servant had dared to speak to him without being spoken to first. "Did you just talk back to me?" He sneered, leaning into my space. "You're a guest in this house, just like the help. You don't tell me where to walk." "I was merely asking for caution, Mr. Thorne," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "You're an arrogant little girl, aren't you?" he hissed. Before I could even process the threat, his hand flew up and struck me across the face. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot in the narrow hallway. My head snapped to the side, and the stinging heat of his palm burned into my skin. I didn't fall, but my spirit felt the impact of 1,000 years of prejudice. The room didn't just go quiet, it became a vacuum. Several guests had seen it from the doorway. They stood frozen, their champagne glasses halfway to their lips, caught between shock and the habit of ignoring the suffering of those they deemed lesser. Until Callum Frost stepped out of the shadows. Callum is a man who defines the atmosphere of any room he enters. He is a British man of sharp, lethal elegance, a mafia boss who operates with a calculated ferocity that has made him the undisputed king of London's underground. To the elite, he is a mystery. To the powerful, he is a nightmare. He had been standing near the kitchen entrance, observing the gala with a cold, detached interest. But when he saw Harrison Thorne strike me, his detachment shattered into 1,000 shards of ice. He moved with a speed that defied his composed exterior. Before Thorne could even pull his hand back, Callum had him by the throat. With a single, fluid motion, he pinned the billionaire against the wood-paneled wall, his hand closing like a vice around Thorne's neck. "Security," Callum said, his voice a low, terrifying whisper that echoed through the silent house. "Lock the doors. No one leaves this gala until I say so." "Callum, let him go. He's a guest," the host shouted, but he took one look at Callum's eyes and stepped back, his face turning ashen. "He's not a guest," Callum hissed, his gaze fixed on Thorne's bulging eyes. "He's a mistake, and I am about to correct him." Callum turned his head slightly to look at me, his expression softening for a fraction of a second. "Larato, come here." I stepped forward, my cheek throbbing and my heart racing. I had never seen Callum this way. To me, he had always been a quiet, respectful presence who visited the children and spoke to me with a kindness no one else offered. I didn't know the depth of the monster he kept caged inside until that moment. "Did you think she was alone, Harrison?" Callum asked, leaning in so close their foreheads touched. "Did you think because she cares for children, she has no one to care for her? You've just made the most expensive mistake of your life." Callum slammed Thorne onto the floor, forcing him onto his knees. "Apologize to her. Now. I'm sorry," Thorne choked out. The arrogance drained from his face as he realized exactly who was standing over him. "Not to me," Callum growled, "to Larato, and say it as if your life depends on it, because right now, it does." Thorne looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pathetic, whimpering terror. I'm sorry, Lorato. I was drunk. I shouldn't have. I'm so sorry. The apology is accepted, Callum said, his voice returning to a calm, British velvet that was somehow even scarier than the shouting. But the consequences are not. He turned to his men, who had appeared at every exit like ghosts. I want Harrison Thorne's name removed from every club in this city. I want his credit lines frozen and his developments audited by dawn. If anyone does business with him from this moment on, they are doing business against me. Is that understood? The room remained in a state of paralyzed shock as security dragged Thorne out through the service entrance. He wasn't just being removed from a party, he was being erased from London society. Callum turned to the host, the man I worked for, who was shaking with fear. Lorato is no longer in your employ, Callum stated. She is moving to my estate tonight. You will pay her for the next 3 years of service as a severance, or I will come back and audit your books next. Do we have an agreement? Yes, Callum. Of course, my former employer stammered. Callum walked over to me and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Let's go, Lorato. You don't belong in a house that doesn't know how to protect you. I walked out of that mansion with my head held high, leaving behind the world of silk and champagne that had allowed a woman to be slapped in silence. Callum escorted me to his car, his presence a shield that felt more solid than the walls of the palace we had just left. He didn't ask me if I was okay. He knew I wasn't. Instead, he made sure I was safe. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of poetic justice. By the time the sun rose over the Thames, Harrison Thorne's empire was in a state of absolute collapse. His partners abandoned him, his bank accounts were under investigation, and the elite clubs he had once frequented had revoked his membership. He had become a pariah overnight, a man whose name was now synonymous with the wrath of Callum Frost. I moved into a beautiful cottage on the edge of Callum's estate. I was no longer a nanny. I was a woman under the protection of a man who treated my dignity as a sacred thing. He ensured I was compensated beyond my wildest dreams, but more importantly, he ensured I was never questioned again. I began to study, to build a life that was truly mine, supported by the quiet, unshakable strength of the man who had seen my pain and decided to end a family's power to stop it. I remember sitting on the porch of my cottage a few months later, watching the sunset. Callum walked up the path, looking less like a mafia boss and more like a man at peace. How is the cheek? He asked softly, sitting on the step beside me. The physical mark is gone, I said, smiling at him. And the other mark, you erased that too, Callum. Good, he said, staring out at the horizon. No one has the right to make you feel like you aren't enough, Lorato. Not in this city. Not as long as I'm here. I realized then that justice isn't always about the law. Sometimes, it's about a man who refuses to look away. Callum hadn't just saved me from a slap. He had saved me from the invisibility that had been my life for 3 years. He had used his power, the kind of power that people whisper about in the dark, to shine a light on the truth, that every human being deserves respect, regardless of their uniform or their country of origin. Harrison Thorne is a ghost now, a cautionary tale told in the bars of Mayfair. He lost everything because he thought he could spit on the foundation of a building he didn't own. And I am Lorato Bopape. I am a woman of Botswana, a woman of London, and a woman who knows that her value is absolute. I am safe, I am protected, and I am finally, truly free. The cinematic justice of that night will stay with me forever, not as a memory of violence, but as a memory of the day the world realized that some women have protectors they never even see coming. Callum Frost is the king of the shadows, but for me, he is the man who brought the light. The city is quiet now. The gala is long over, but the lesson remains: never mistake a quiet woman for a weak one, and never mistake a nanny for someone who is alone. Because in the heart of London, there is a power that watches over the humble, and it has a very long memory for those who forget their manners. I am home. I am at peace, and the future is as bright as the Botswana sun. I look at my hands, the hands that once scrubbed floors and held bottles, and I see the hands of a woman who is ready to lead. My story is just beginning, and this time, I am the one holding the pen. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more Mafia love and justice stories. Where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts.